ESCAP colleagues. As always, thank you for making time and joining us today. And as always, before starting the meeting, I would like to briefly give an overview of our last meeting, which was held on 13th of March. So as a group, we discussed and agreed on the topics of 2022 meetings, which will cover compilation of statistics for disaster-related statistical framework tables, and the Confluence platform will serve as a space for discussion and information exchange on our disaster-related statistics experiences. And the technical working group also joined the live poll on disaster related statistical framework e-learning, and where many of us expressed interests in participating the CIAP's upcoming facilitated courses of disaster-related statistics. And additionally, we had an opportunity to learn about Sri Lanka's progress on disaster-related statistics. On the topics of technical working group meetings in 2022, the Secretariat has circulated the list of suggested speakers for your review, confirmation, and suggestions. And I would like to thank you who provided feedback and confirmed and volunteered to present or facilitate on different topics for this year. And today we would like to gather your comment on suggested speakers. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to share with us during the next session, because our next session is introducing the meetings for this year. Also, I would like to thank our Secretariat for circulating the list, the tables, and then also facilitating all the work for us. Thank you very much. So with that, I would like to start our today's meeting. So we'll start with the update from the Secretariat, and Ms. Paul will introduce a suggested list of speakers and moderators for TWG meetings in 2022. After her short presentations, I would like to ask our members provide your inputs or suggestions if you have. So Ms. Paul, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to have you all here. So as Aruna mentioned, we're going to be looking into the list of suggested speaker, and this is suggestions. So if any of you have comments or other recommendation, you're more than welcome to share with us. So on the first bit here, we already saw the meeting today. So we luckily thank for the coordination of Fuji and the kind acceptance of BPS and BMBP, as well as the ADRC for accepting the invitation to present today. For the other upcoming meetings, here we will have the next one will be on the background statistics. And here we propose the Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics, UN Women, UN Habitat, or UNFPA. It depends on the availability as well. So we will coordinate if this is agreed, and the moderator, the facilitator, we propose perhaps could be the NBS, the Bureau of Statistics from Maldives. And the next bit, on the impact statistics, so we propose that perhaps Turkey and UNDR, and we kindly received an offer from the IDMC, the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, to present something on displacement statistics. And moderator would be CBS, the Bureau of Statistics from Nepal. Again, this is subject to agreement of all the proposed list, proposed speakers. The next bit we have the direct impact, where we also like propose Philippines. I'm not sure like if any of you like joining us today and like find a schedule doesn't suit you or anything, please feel free to like let us know. Yeah. And for the moderator, like Pichi is our vice chair, like could perhaps like help us moderating the session. And on the monetary terms, like of the material impacts, like again, like we asked for Indonesia like experience to be shared, and perhaps like NSO Mongolia could help moderating. And on the agriculture, we have like proposed that maybe the NDMA, like Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Thailand, and FAO could be speaking, whereas the Department of Malaysia has already agreed to accept to facilitate. Also, the DDM PM also accept the to speak as well. And the last bit here we have the expenditure, and the usual suspect. We propose Philippines, like the PSA, to be presenting, whereas like we also ask again for your kindness of like the BPS to help us moderate. So that's the list here. So yeah, so please feel free to share your thought or comment or yeah suggestion, if any. You can
Thank
also
you, Miss
use
Paul.
the
Yeah.
electric hand. Okay, I'm giving the floor back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for the introduction. So I can see Ricky. Yeah, and then Puji. Yes, Ricky first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ariana, and thanks also Paul for pulling all this together and also managing messages from all the ones on this call who've also, submitted your preferences and suggestions. What I want to mention is, as Paul said, you're very welcome to reach out to ESCAP, and it doesn't have to be limited, to saying whether you're available or not on, the specific date. But if you have suggestions on other topics that you may want to cover or have ideas, maybe no contacts in research institutions or international organizations where you think that they could contribute to some of the topics that we have all agreed to cover during these during the set of meetings this year, then please feel free to do so. So we certainly also welcome suggestions that go beyond, what you or your colleagues may be able to contribute personally. So I just wanted to make that addition. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. Puji?
From my side, I would like to thank the Secretariat for preparing that extensive program. I think, as we said last time, this is a transition from experience sharing into something that is more specific. So in that regard, I would like to suggest to colleagues online right now, and confirmation from Secretariat that we could pass it on to other people to join in and learn together in the coming meetings, because these are really substantive and important topic. Could I confirm that with Kunpor and Rike, that we would encourage, I myself encourage other people to join in the conversation. Over to you.
If that's okay, Ms. Ariana, I think I need to probably answer that one.
Oh, sure, of course. Go ahead.
And I just want to take us all back actually to how this TWG was established, because we established it as an open community of practice. So thanks, Pucci, for giving me a chance to remind everyone of this. And that means that we do not have any limitations in terms of who can or cannot be members here. If there are any particular people you think would benefit from participating sort of also regularly in the TWG, please do send us a note about this. But if it's you know, a particular topic for a particular TWG meeting where you think, okay, I want to share that with others so they can listen in, you know, you can just, I mean, just go ahead and do that. Yeah. So we are organizing open meetings here, and I think it's in everybody's interest. You know, the more people, experiences, and brains are behind each of the sessions, you know, the better it is for all of us. So that's how we look at it, and it was also in that spirit this community of practice was established. Yeah. So thanks, Puji, for bringing this to the table again.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes, Ariana, just take on a
yes.
little bit, like in the case of Indonesia, I think Dr. Abdul Muhari will highlight later. We are building a core of colleagues in different ministries and agencies. So it's good to use this opportunity really to build together, you know, common understanding from the start. So this is how useful the technical working group could be. So over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Puji. Thank you, Ricky, for the additional informations. And then, of course, we would be happy to expand the TWG group. And then, yes, as Ricky and then Paul and then Puji said that please send a note to the secretariat if you want to add additional members to TWG. And I don't see anyone's hand. So if you have any other comments or suggestions, again, please feel free to send an email to the secretariat and then offer if you want to share the information, please do it. So with that, let me move to our next session. In this session, our presenters will talk about production and compilation of occurrence statistics. And today we have Ms. Po again from our secretariat, and Shiomi-san from ADRC, and then colleagues from BPC Statistics Indonesia and BNPB National Agency for Disaster Management Indonesia. And now I would like to invite our Puji to facilitate this session. Puji, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, as usual, it's always a pleasure to be part of this meeting. So in this, let me just open my file briefly. There are a couple of important things to start the conversation, I think. But let's just stop. Let me open my file first, Chair. Colleagues, just for your information, one of our presenters will be traveling in a vehicle, so later some of the connection from Indonesia may be disrupted a little bit or unstable at least. I hope that doesn't, you know, disrupt too much, and we'll be a bit patient about it. I'm still waiting for my file to open. Okay. The first one is really in the bigger picture of the disaster-related statistical framework. There are different, how to say, subtopics. First one is about the occurrence. The second one is about the impact, and then concerning the financing or the expenditure. So the first one is really about the occurrence statistics in the context of DRSF. And then later will be on the unique identification of event, and then later will be the current existing practice on the ground. So now may I call our colleague from ESCAP to present or to orient us to situate the occurrence statistics in the context of DRSF, please.
Thank you, Puji. Okay. Right. So as Puji mentioned, like we're going to be touching upon the occurrence statistics in the view of DRSF. So like just to, I'm not going to cover and go through every detail of each of the slides because it's going to be long, but I'm going to like share some notes on each of these slides. So here we have the diagram that we're like quite familiar with, and from this disaster risk management cycle, if we look from the perspective of a statistic, so here are the components of the DRSF. On the left hand here, the brown boxes, it's actually the background statistics that we have before the occurrence. And then on the right hand here, in the blue, green, beige boxes, those are the disaster that we collect during and after the disaster. And when we talk about the occurrence statistics, this is when the emergency occurs, right? So this is how in the cycle, this is where this would place. So in terms of the use of the occurrence statistics, this is extract from the table in DRSF. I'm not sure which pages exactly, but here are some example of the use of the current statistics. So during the risk assessment, for example, on the top left corner, we have common issues such as development, investment that should be informed by risk profiles. And the decision or plans that we should make is how we could plan to avoid a new risk. And by using the dynamic hazard profiles, for example, to make decision, this could help to be better informed. On the top right here, we have a move to the mitigation and preparedness phase, where the common issue could be as we have the more information about risk, the profile of the risk change, and then if we have development that happen in potentially vulnerable areas, we might need to decide whether we want to or how to discourage those developments to happen in the hazardous area. And this is where statistic of scale, location, or characteristics of investment of disaster risk reduction could play some role here. And in terms of the response, during the emergency that already happened, during this time we need to act quickly, and we have to determine whether the geographical scale or of the disaster and prioritize the need. So this is when the occurrence statistic could also help making proper decision, a better decision as well. And in the long term, we could, one of the examples that we could of the common issues are we could try to make sure that fragile communities will not regress into new risks or new emergency crisis. And by to do so, we would need to decide to determine appropriate level of investment to help them to completely recover from impacts of disaster. And dynamic hazard profile, for example, could be statistic that we can use to feed into that. And in terms of data, statistics, and indicator, so the data and statistics of occurrence, it could be in the form at the bottom of the pyramid here. It could be either annual, multi-year statistic on the type, the date, the time, geographical scale, or even magnitude. And then we summarize them into the table A, which will be shown later. And then this could be used to feed into the indicator, which can be a little bit context variable. And in general, it could be used for the trend analysis to measure intensity of impact over times and so on. So it can be used depending on the context and the policy need as well. So here's the basic information that the table A collects. So we look into the hazard type, the scales, and geographical region. And as you all know, we have the CF course on the DRSF, the e-learning that is actually a self-paced that you can take opportunity to look into it yourself. And here are some two modules that actually cover the occurrence statistics. So the link I'll provide it in this slide. So please feel free to click and directly try it. Yeah. And the next part, we're going to talk about the basic concept, the definition and classification, which is quite essential in terms of the collection of occurrence statistics. And here are the basic characteristics of disaster. We have the timing, like which include the beginning, the end, the duration of emergency period. Geographical location is also important, and here we hope like we it would be better that we could use like the shape file or GIS format that for hazard mapping, so on, which we will learn later from our Indonesian colleague. And then the next bit is the hazard type, which this could be like in terms of geological, meteorological, and then we're gonna touch upon this later in the next few slides. And the last bit is disaster scale or magnitude, which also depends on how like we're gonna classify that. It's gonna be it could be the national emergency or local emergency, but in terms of the Sendai monitoring, like Sendai framework monitoring, like there's no impact threshold. And the bottom bit is like actually like a from the DRSF as well, how like the example of reporting. And move to the concepts and definition. So like indeed we have the term disaster and we have the term hazard, but actually like whether hazard turning into a disaster also depends on how a society cope with such an event as well. And then we also have the concept of emergency, which in general, like a state of emergency demands to be declared and imposed by relevant authority at national or local level, right? And with the declaration of state of emergency, it's actually count as a criteria by MDAT, this disaster area where, beside the declaration of emergency, there are also some other criteria such as the dead or the effect, the number of the dead or the effect, or the call for international assistance here. And in terms of the call for international assistance, that would link to the next slide where we like have the concept of large disaster and medium and small, some small scale disaster. So in general, a large disaster requires assistance at national level or international level. But in general, this is quite the occurrence of this is quite like relatively rare, but the effect is actually quite extensive and long term. But sometimes it could be identified like some that there sometimes are covered by the post disaster studies, like specific one for the impact and so on. And it could be because of the scale, it could include cross the boundaries and include in the multiple reporting regions. But on the other hand, like we do have the medium and small scale disaster. It might be small, but actually on the aggregate across disasters, the impacts from these tend to be greater because they tend to happen more frequent than larger ones. And then we also have the concept of slow onset disaster and sudden onset disaster. And actually, when we talk about the concept itself, this might look not too tricky, but when it comes to practice, with the slow onset, for example, because it's a type of disaster that emerged gradually over time, the question of identification of beginning and end period of a disaster can be a little bit challenging in different contexts because we're talking about some drought that we might not be able to identify when actually it happened. But in terms of the sudden onset, sometimes it's relatively more straightforward, I would put it. The next bit is hazard types. So here on the left, we have the IRDR, like Pearl and Hazard Glossary. And I think this glossary is also recommended in the technical guidance for monitoring of the Sendai framework indicators. On the top six of the left boxes here, left table here, is the hazard family that mentioned include in the Pearl and Hazard glossary, and then the environmental degradation and technological hazard are two categories that added into the Sendai framework. But then we also have an opportunity in the one of the previous meeting to learn about the new classification, the review of the hazard definition and classification. what we see here is that if you see the left and right here, we have the meteorological and the hydrological, which in the previous category, like they're classified into different family in the IRDR term. But here we have the two type put together, and we also have the societal hazard added onto the list. On the meteorological and hydrological ones, like it could be more or less like when we talk about this, it could be more or less said that they're climate related disaster if we want to look from the climate change perspective. But then we should be cautious when we report them. We should make distinction between fire, for example, that's caused by human activity, or wildfires that are caused by extreme event like just like heat, like dry heat or something like that. Here's an example. This is in some countries that would be the nationally adopted list, but in this case, it's more of a compilation of different terms and definition that used in Australian context. But I'm just putting it here just for an example, like where people could have this kind of a database where they can check the differences for different users. And moving on to the next bit, besides like that single hazard, we also have the cascading multiple hazard disaster, where one type of hazard actually causes one or more additional hazard. So in this case, like as you can see in the graphic here, like a storm could cause like the flood, and the flood could cause landslide, or the storm could cause the flood and landslide together. To report this, actually, like we can try to categorize, like report them in their own special categories. And then we should note, though, for the purpose of categorization, that which one is the triggering event. So here in this case, it would be storm. And then which one are the connected event, which would be the floods and landslide in this case. And in terms of the data sources and existing tools, usually it's the NDMA or equivalent agencies in the country who collect the data, like when the actual event happens, right? But then we do also have like other national agencies such as meteorological, geological, hydrological organization who do have like a more specific detail of these, or even like historical data of these as well. And on the right pane here, like we have the list of tools and guides that exist that we can refer to. Many of you might be familiar like, with the MDAT, the Desk Inventor, the Preview Global Risk Data Platform, or the GeoPortal. And like for the mapping, like we have this ESCAP produced the like mapping guidebook, which for hazard mapping we can select a certain step. But actually, like some of these tools, like they might not be the most up to date, and I learned that some of them would be updated soon. So I think we should keep ourselves updated. And in terms of the institutional dimension, we actually talk about the need of why do we need the coordination between NSO and NDMA on in terms of the assurance of statistic and data quality. On the right top left here, sorry, we have certain like a list of qualities that we want to have for like a good quality statistics, right? But then like when we talk about when like hazardous event or disaster happen, I don't think we can cover all of this. And actually, by achieving some of these, like for example, timeliness, would be a trade-off of another one, like the accuracy or the occurrence or comparability. However, we should try to ensure that we could later make like the concepts or the terms or the like ensure all these quality to make sure that later on, like we could harmonize in the in the system in terms of the concept, which actually this will facilitate the production of impact and risk statistic. Because the impact and risk statistic in numbers of cases, like we would rely on the statistics from NSO and so on, where we may have different definition and terms. So like ensuring that this concept are harmonized, like would be ideal and like easy to work for everyone. And also the classification, these classification and definition and methodologies, more or less, if they're aligned with the national and international reporting frameworks, that would be quite ideal as well for facilitate everyone's work, I would say. And to bridge these gaps, I think we have a like metadata where we can use like accompany, like attach it to the set of data that collected during the occurrence. And in these metadata could explain the fundamental information such as classification, definition, methodology, and so on. And this would help explain like and bridge the gaps with the data from other domains such as socioeconomics or environment statistics. And there's another bit that could help, like linking them together as the unique identifier code, which we will hear from the next slide, how this could link, like the occurrence statistic could be linked to the impact or risk statistics. But in terms of the disasters occurrence, like if you look at this definition, we would have here, like on the left, we would talk about the serious disruption where we have the timing, location, scale, and as a type like data collected. But then on the second criteria, we do have the impact part that we will have to collect these data as well. So in the structure of the loss, damage and loss database, we would see like this chart is also taken from the DRSF as well. And we would see here is the occurrence statistic, which would link to other type of statistic in the database. Yeah. So in terms of linkages to international framework or indicator, like the occurrence statistic itself, like it's not used for reporting anything, but they're used for aggregation, for reporting of other targets and indicators. So like the list here are those that like could be aggregated by geography, timing, and hazard type. And I think that comes to the end of my slide. Yeah. So yeah. So thank you. I'll pass the floor back to you, Puchi.
Okay, thank you, Kunpor. So, colleagues, I think this is very important for us to take note of what was presented by Kunpor. That in terms of statistics, one, not any event, not every event classify as disaster events. If it does, it needs to be classified in a certain way so that it can be counted, right? And it needs to be to have a unique identifier. So I think Kunpor in the discussion a bit later, on the right side of that diagram that you showed earlier, that an event could be considered disaster only when it has consequences that disrupt communities living. It could be death, injury, damage, and so on. The question is where the threshold is. Where is the limit that an event called disaster, which one is not? But I'm sure it will come across later in the next conversation. And we are really privileged to have our colleague from ADRC. ADRC has been joining our meeting since the beginning. And we have now Xiaomi Yumi-san. She's a senior researcher of ADRC, to share the methodology to come up with a unique identifier of events. Yumi-san, do you like to take about 12 to 15 minutes? Over to you.
Let me start with background and objectives. There are different databases on disaster-related information, and they have different criterions and definitions. For example, about hazard and damages. And there is a case that a disaster event that affects multiple countries and areas with different local names. Another case, a disaster event that causes multiple disasters, like a storm causes wind and heavy rain, and that causes flood and landslides. Thus, there was an urgent need for coordination mechanism to identify disasters. So after a long discussion and coordination, finally the GLIDE, Global Unique Disaster Identifier, was developed as a tool to allow anyone to easily share disaster information provided by various organizations around the world more than 20 years ago. So global initiative, and it is operated and supported by global partners. And it is expressed in a very simple combination of hazard, year, serial number, and country. So this TC 2022-000197 PHL is a glide number for April Philippine tropical storm. So this hazard code, at present there are 24 hazard codes. And as you see, these hazard codes include natural and technical and complex disasters. Then, how GLIDE is utilized? I'd like to introduce ADRC's website. Here you go to disaster information website about that tropical storm of the Philippines, April. You reach this site and summary of impacts. And you'll see glide number here, left top. And of course, it reaches GLIDE website. And the right side, you see two logos, where ReliefWeb and JDAX. If you click, it jumped to the website about the disaster of these organizations. So this connection becomes available thanks to GLIDE numbers. Next is about connection with satellite data and map services. Left side is Centenary Asia website. So this is the initiative of space agencies and disaster management organizations in Asia about space imageries and analysis. And right side is UNOSAT website. So as you see, glide number here. So you see the glide numbers are utilized like this in satellite data map services. Next one is about regional organization, AHA Center's website. They have a page about glide number in ASEAN countries. And finally, ESCAP also has latest news on disaster risk reduction. So as for major disasters, you see the connection becomes available among disaster stakeholders. And this is the example of our partner organizations. As you see, there are various organizations, international, regional organizations, national organizations, and academia are our partners. About GLIDE system, its operation is done by our qualified operators in partner organizations. They issue GLIDE numbers via GLIDE website. And once they issue GLIDE numbers, they are shared to some 2,000 subscribers at the moment. And our management system, last year, steering committee was organized by partner organizations. So as to GLIDE system be improved and promoted. Now, the steering committee chair is Professor Ono of Tohoku University. And for the specific topics, subcommittees are also established about SOP, API, and product development. And ADRC serves as permanent secretariat. And GLIDE and disaster-related statistics. In the beginning of my presentation, I explained the background and objectives of GLIDE. So you see that it is similar to the disaster-related statistics. There are lots of organizations, different data, unstructured and uncoordinated. The left side, this sentence is taken from a DRSF publication. And we believe GLIDE can support for disaster-related statistics. Why? Because GLIDE enables facilitation of data integration, and it can apply to all disaster phases and fields, and thus it can contribute to reporting of international initiatives. And now, especially, we have developed an API of GLIDE. We believe this API will help realize speedy connection with programs. And finally, GLIDE is quite open and free of charge service. So if you are interested and if you would like to know more, please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sumi-san. So, okay. So this is yet another very important topics, both at the national level and regional and globally, that disaster events are assigned with unique identification. Only then disaster event become something that is countable, comparable, could be analyzed. And I know that Indonesia has been trying for quite some time to introduce this unification, unique identification. And I think it's a very nice segue now to look at the actual application on the ground. From Kunpor that is talking about the framework, and then from ADRC to speak about the identification, now to Indonesia to speak how a country deal with the recording of disaster occurrences and using a unique perspective of two key agencies, like in the DRSF itself, which is the National Disaster Management Authority in one hand and the National Statistical Office in the other. We have two presenters. The first one is Dr. Abdul Muhari. He is the head of the Data Information and Communication Center of the National Disaster Management Authority of Indonesia. He has been a frequent visitor and guest to our technical working group, and he's given very good guidance along that line. And second is my colleague Ajeng. She is from the Social Resilience Statistics Division of the Indonesia Statistics. They will be presenting this jointly. So may I now invite Dr. Abdul Muhari to present BNPB's perspective on the disaster occurrences, please. Dr. Muhari, please.
Thank you, Pak Puji. Okay, thank you everyone. Good afternoon. And as Pak Puji said, I'm sorry if my background looks like somewhere I currently on going to the airport back to Jakarta. So yeah, may I have my talk, please? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the overall, the summary of my talk. First, the BNPB play important role. Before the disaster, we play a role as coordinating ministries in terms of preparation and also the mitigation for the disasters. And during the disaster, we play a role as the command ministries, command agencies. And after the disaster, we play a role as the implementing agencies. And the policy that we would like to mainstream here and after is to have one stop shop data, what we call it one disaster data policy in Indonesia. But of course, it should be underwent certain regulation and certain process. The mechanism itself at the BNPB, we collecting data from the local BPPD, and it consists of dynamic data, which is the data they currently updating on the of the ongoing event, or the data coming from one municipality at the ongoing fiscal year that would be finalized, would be verified, would be validated, will underwent validation at the end of the ongoing fiscal year. Next slide, please. So this is the detail of the process, how the data being collected from the local disaster management agencies, from the bottom level, and also from the horizontal level, the ministries and agencies, and also the media. This is the unstructured data we got from the media. Then it coming to the operational control command center, and we then collected the data, moved to the data information and communication center, where the data will be verified, will be validated, and then once the data being verified and being validated, it will be stored at the National Data Disaster Database at the BNPB, which will be used to provide the presidential briefing. Here, presidential briefing, we always provide daily data from the ongoing event. But if there is no disaster event, we provide weekly or monthly briefing to the presidents, and a special report, disaster data bank, and DB application. DB is the disaster database at the BNPB. Slide, please. So we discussed a little bit in the previous speaker about the type of the recorded hazard. What event that should be included on the database, what event that should be included or to be recorded. Of course, when we talk about disaster, the event that typically induce casualties and or damage at any certain value at any certain level. But what we put on the report or the providing a special report on the ongoing event or the disaster event that we put the certain threshold. In example, the impact to the community should be more than 20 household or at least one casualties. But of course, this still to be subject to be discussed whether or not this appropriate or to be enhanced. The thing that we haven't provide the regulation for the data is the vehicle or mean of transport and also livestock losses. Livestock losses so far included into the economic losses. Slide, please. So in order to manage the integration of the data or the sharing policy of the data, we also, from the previous discussion, has been mentioned that in the global level, ADRC already spoke about the glide, and at the national level, the BMPB currently developing the personal disaster identity number. This is the bridging to quickly share the data with the other ministries, with the NGO, and also with the media, not only from the BNPB to these ministries to these entities, but also from these entities into BNPB, because the disasters data currently distributed to the several ministries regarded with the vulnerability data, the capacity data, the ones we would like to making an integration analysis, then we provide it with the disaster identity number. Slide. Slide, please. So this is the example of the way we representing the daily updated data at the BMPB from the spatial perspective. Slide, please. And this is the cumulative data from ongoing fiscal year from the statistical or the tabular perspective. Okay, I think this is my last slide. I hand over back to Pak Puji.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Mahari. It's much appreciated. I hope that by now, colleagues, you can see the how the connection between the framework, the theory, and how it's being practiced in Indonesia. It's still work in progress, I suppose, Dr. Mahari, but progress has been made and will continue to be pursued. Now, let's transition to the other side of the presentation. We have Pramudia Ajeng, my colleague from the BPS. Ajeng, please take the screen.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, Madam Chair. To all TWG member, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. It was a great pleasure for us to share the experience of Indonesia in terms of DRSF, especially disaster occurrence data collection. My name is Pramudia Ajeng from Directorate of Social Resilience Statistics, BPS Statistics. Ms. Nurma send you an apology. She cannot attend because she has to attend another important meeting in the meantime. Okay, I will continue to the second part. The presentation will focus on BPS perspective as an NSO in disaster occurrence data collection. As it stated in the Dr. Muhari, in the last 3 years, Indonesia, in collaboration with BPS and BNPB, developed the One Indonesia Disaster Data, known as SDBI in Bahasa. The output that we produce from SDBI include the stat channel portal prototypes in BPS site, which was introduced last year, and it is still being developed this year. SDBI and also the stat channel portal adopt the disaster-related statistic framework, which structure into 4 statistics: disaster occurrence, risk, impact, and DRR reduction activity. BPS has the supportive role in the collection of disaster occurrence data. The UNEC published a recommendation of the role of NSO in measuring hazardous event and disaster, which are provision basic data, support disaster risk management, develop international comparable statistics, establish and enforce quality standard, and communicating and disseminating statistics to decision maker. So far, BPS statistic has done point 1, point 3, and point 4. Provide basic data, international comparability, and quality standard. We hope so. And the UNEC also state additional role include assist measurement of direct indirect impact, information mapping, measurement methodology, and dissemination of statistic information. As you see in the middle green box, Indonesia already has one data policy in form of presidential decree of number 39 2019, which stated the role of BPS as a statistical advisor in one data policy. One data requirement, the existence of one data standard, one metadata, reference code, and the data will be interoperable nationally. The role of BPS in one data, Indonesia as statistic advisor are work on statistic policy, coordination of statistic activities, national among ministries and internationally, support technical and methodological standard, provide basic population data, collection of related data in socioeconomic national survey and village potential data, promote data standard and metadata, data interoperability, and brought reference code to the Indonesia One Data Forum. Regarding to disaster occurrence data, of course, occurrence data collection is carried out by BNPB, and in SDBI process, the role of NSO are help setting the metadata and data standard. We are adopting the hazard information profile, conducting data collection training, provide recommendation for ministries and agency training for occurrence data, help data checking and displaying occurrence data in Stacana portal Indonesia Data Hub. So far, we have been setting in metadata and data standard, as well as this displaying disaster occurrence data on Stacana. This year, BPS will focus on discussion regard to data collection with BNPB, as well as provide recommendation for data collection and disaster event. Next slide, please. Thank you. BPS also provide the easier access to disaster occurrence related basic data. In the StatChana portal, you can find data of population census to have the total of population, socioeconomic survey that produce household information of socioeconomic percentage, household. Sorry. Okay. Percentage of household. Percentage of household under poverty, under clean water and sanitation. We also have village potential database with a number of public facilities, socioeconomic facilities, percentage of village experiencing disaster, village on mitigation facilities, and hopes in the furthermore, we also next step will have at national account data from GDP actual and constant price, also regional GDP at actual and constant price. Okay, next slide, please. BPS help establish and reinforce quality standard. A good quality data is equipped with attributes such as metadata and data standard. In accordance with UNEC recommendation, establish and enforcing disaster data quality standard is one of the role of NSO. And the role of BPS as the National Statistic Advisor is to ensure data quality assurance by providing input to BNPB related to standard of measurement and calculation of disaster data, encourage each data producer to submit and establish a statistical data standard (SDS) for each disaster data that will be used across agencies, and monitoring the submission of statistical data standard and metadata sufficiencies for each disaster data. BPS provide repository for cross-agency disaster data in disaster statistic portal Statchana as part of the Indonesia Data Hub. That is shown in the right image are the example of the metadata and the example of data standard, which is present in the portal of Statchana. Next slide, please. BPS facilitated BNPB, ministries and agency develop disaster data standard. They are disaster occurrence database. Some are actually rather sophisticated, such as the IRBI, Indonesia Disaster Risk Index, who now is the momentum we take to quickly establish data standard, including definition, types, classification of event, threshold of disaster event, unique classification of event. We may use the hazard definition classification review. More than 300 globally, more than 300 well-defined hazard classified into 8 categories come with concept, definition, classification, formula, and references. This UNDRR International Science Council product has been a great potential to be adopted in Indonesia context to serve as the basic of adopting nationally agreed data standard for disaster-related statistics. Below, you may see the sectoral and multi-sectoral data standard, which you may see the cross-sectoral data standard that regulated by BPS is in form of regulation of the head of BPS and applied to all ministry. And how Indonesia developed multi-sectoral data standard. In the right corner, you may see the flow of submission cross-sectoral data standard. First, the data producer, ministry, and agency submit proposal for data standard that will be checked by the data custodian in terms of disaster is BNPB. If it is appropriate, if the process will be continued to data advisory or BPS. The data standard that has been received by the data advisor BPS will be checked, and the data standard set through the National Statistical Data Standard in the form of master file of National Statistical Data Standard. Next slide, please. Okay, so what will BPS do to enhance disaster occurrence data? Some of the work is in the progress. First, we may promote data quality by developing the disaster data standard, adapting the hazard information profile, and UNDRR hazard definition and classification review by providing the data reference from the Indonesia One Data Forum, by making them easily accessible to user through the disaster statistic portal as part of the Indonesia Data Hub. To support develop capacity by helping ministry and agency develop metadata and data standard, by providing capacity development in data planning, production, and communication. Third, to support with data accessibility by establishing disaster statistic portal Statchana as part of Indonesia Data Hub. The portal Statchana makes easier access to the disaster relevant basic data and repository of data standard, including metadata and references. And fourth, to help communicate disaster occurrence data policymaker by including disaster occurrence data in BPS statistic policy brief or recommendation and etc. I guess that's all our presentation. I'm sorry if it's over time. Thank you. Thank you, Pak
Thank
Puji.
you, Ajeng. Thank you, Ajeng, for that presentation. No, it's not. It is not over time. You delivered exactly at the time. So let me thank first the speakers, Kunpor, and then Yumi-san, Dr. Mukhari, and Ajeng for delivering. By now, I hope it's a comprehensive picture of what disaster occurrence identification and recording looks like. Now, We have about 15 minutes, and Dr. Muhari, I believe, is even stopping from the highway to make sure that we are connected. And thank you very much for that, Dr. Muhari. But colleagues, the floor is open. Please raise your hand or unmute or indicate in your on the chat box if you have any questions, including Ricky and Madam Chair. You can ask questions as well. Anyone?
Yeah,
Ricky.
maybe I can kick it off.
I put you on the spot to ask the question to Dr. Muhari, to Ajeng, Yumisan, and Kunpor. Go ahead.
Actually, I just have a reflection on what we've been hearing, because first, an overview of, what do we really consider occurrence statistics, where are all the issues, and then excellent presentations, actually giving us also very much information on the practicalities. What do these challenges look like in reality when we have to pull some kind of comparable statistics together on occurrence statistics, well knowing that we still have quite a lot of challenges that are not addressed to make sure that things are comparable over time, different geographies, different provinces, everything. Yeah. So what I wanted to just let everyone know, and it is a bit of a repetition, but as you all know, we have a global group also on disaster-related statistics, which really is pulling together these experiences we are hearing into recommendations for what could we consider standards for disaster occurrence statistics, among others. So I just wanted to put this on the table, because we see that a lot. If we don't get disaster occurrence statistics right, then all the other statistics that we are all screaming for to be able to do risk analysis, for example, is simply not possible. So we are sort of in the foundational corner here. So I just wanted to make this comment, because that was what was going through my mind as I was listening to you. And I think also it's great to see the collaboration in Indonesia, because we really see the extreme potential and benefit of statisticians and disaster management agencies working together here, because none of you could do this on your own, because you need each other's expertise. So I just want to give also verbally a big applause to both of you and to all your colleagues who are putting this together, because it's just a massive undertaking. So I think there is something here for everyone else to take good note of. So that's all for me right now, Puji,
Okay.
and I hope some of our other listeners have been given a little time also to reflect and maybe are ready to ask some questions. And I actually see now that there is a question in the chat there. So maybe back to you, Puji, as our moderator of today.
Let me pick up two of the conversations here very quickly. From Kansa, there's a question. Kansa, if you're online, why don't you just unmute yourself and you can ask the question? Concerning the cascading disasters.
Yeah, thank you very much, Puji, and thank you to all the speakers. It was an incredibly interesting series of presentations, and I've really enjoyed that, and I'm sort of looking forward to finding out more from you. My sort of question was around, so at the moment I'm working on the disaster related statistics pilot project, and it's based on what Rike was talking about. We are looking at how we could contribute to the framework and make sensible recommendations about how we can have pragmatic and practical solutions to collecting that information. Through the expert focus groups, the issue around cascading hazards has come up repeatedly. People aren't sure how to best capture the harm from cascading hazards. So I suppose my question to everybody, really, including our speakers, is, are there any good examples of how data around cascading hazards or the harm from cascading hazards is captured? And if so, would you like to contribute to this project to be able to help us to develop recommendations around cascading hazards?
Kansa, I suggest you take just 2 seconds to make sure we have a common understanding. What do you mean by cascading hazard, so that Dr. Muhari could associate
absolutely.
it? Go ahead.
Absolutely. So for cascading hazards, the example that was given by one of our experts was, if you have an earthquake, you will have mortality, but from that earthquake, buildings will collapse. Now, if somebody dies because the building collapsed on them, did they die because of the earthquake, or did they die because of the building collapse? And how do you capture the cause of death, and which set of figures do they go into? If there is then a tsunami, but the tsunami was caused by an earthquake, is the death from a tsunami because of the earthquake, or because of the tsunami, or the building that collapsed because of the tsunami?
All right.
So it was that kind of really conceptual conversation, because people were saying, how can we accurately capture cause of death and cause of harm from a hazard, because we don't have a system for capturing that. And the hazard information profiles currently look at hazards as individual hazards rather than as a group.
Okay. So I guess what I can do is try to bring it closer to home and to reality, right? Dr. Muhari, I think you talked together with us in Central Sulawesi. We have a tsunami, and then we have an earthquake. I don't know which one to come first. I think earthquake first, and then you have tsunami, and then after that you have liquefaction, and after that you have flood in one location at different time. So question to Yumi-san would be, Yumi-san, where and how would you attach identification to the 4 events that happen in one compressed time and space, right? And then for Ajeng, maybe, how would you associate this with identification? You know, how would you classify this? And for Dr. Muhari, in practicality, how did you report it to the president? Did you report this is a tsunami, or this is an earthquake? Or how do you count all of this? You know, so I'm just trying to make the question live. Can I start with Yumi-san first, please? Yumi-san, how do you assign unique identification to this overlapping and cascading hazard? Over to you, Yumi-san.
Hi, thank you for asking. Sorry, I'm not sure if my camera is working or not, but anyway, as for Glide, we have a system to, it is called as extend. So as I said earlier, that we have a typical hazard code, for example, tsunami for TS, but of course it is created by earthquake. So in that case, firstly, we issue glide number with EQ earthquake. But when tsunami and tsunami damage was identified, then we extend the glide number to TS. That means the serial number is the same, but the code, hazard code is extended. This is how we are dealing with this kind of cascading hazards. However, you know, as for storms like typhoon, cyclones, there are a lot of phenomena. And due to the, how can I say, the limitation of personnel, we sometimes fail to extend all the impacts, like hazard, the landslide, the debris throw, or slope failure, or similar phenomena. But sometimes just main impacts is utilized as the glide number. Thank you very much.
All right. Ajeng, do you have any comment about this? Additional comment, if you like.
This is what BPS plans to do this year. We are experiencing the same problem. We have same issue. We got maybe in some cases we had wrong classification, gitu, or maybe in your experience, maybe I don't know. Maybe in this, I already asked the same question to Mr. Puji before, and
to me, and I have to answer.
Puji had the answer of Pak Puji maybe in the noted as the as it what it's the cause, the cause of the hazard, the cause of hazard. I think that's my opinion.
Right. So I guess to confirm what you said, Ajeng, is that although there are series of events, right, but the principal hazard itself that become the cause, the trigger of the rest, would bear importance as an identifier of the series of events, because otherwise it's going to be confusing. Not only that, if it happened to several provinces, and then we have to deal, in the case of Indonesia, we have to deal with different provincial codes as well, right? So this is the thing that we are facing in Indonesia, and BPS and BNPB are in a conversation to adapt the HIP into Kansa. Hopefully sooner than later, this will have a conversation with you. But let me move on to Dr. Muhari, put him on the spot. So if you to report to the president, right, with these four things cascading, how would you say it? Over to you, Dr. Muhari.
Thank you, Pak Puji. Thank you, Kansa, for this very challenging question that practically we facing this several times. I will show you the example of Pak Puji said in the local scale, we have 2018 Palu earthquake, tsunami, and liquefaction. But in the more wider disaster, we have the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, tsunami, and also radioactive at Fukushima, where I was there at the time of the tsunami. So at first, we should agree that the number will capture the event, not the particular hazard. So if the number captures the event, then we can describe the sub number later on that this event consists of several hazards, several types of hazards. This is for the first. And the second, if we would like to distinguish the casualties, which one died by what kind of causes, this is very difficult, almost impossible. But we could do this in terms of building damage or infrastructure's damage through the forensic disaster analysis. So this is the thing that still ongoing assessment, that of course this should be included on the way we representing the number later on. But at first, as we consider this cascading event, then we should agree that the number is not representing the specific hazard, but representing the event. Probably that's my comment, Pak Puji.
Thank you very much. So coming from someone who is putting presidential briefing on daily basis, this is very important how practical it is, right? Academic debate aside, what Pak Muhari said is, if the running number is definite, then the type of hazard that involved in it could be secondary, because it could be convoluted, interlocuted, and what's not. And Pak Muhari, while you are on the microphone, could you also tell us the complication of the difficulty to define the beginning and the end of a disaster? Over to you, Dr. Muhari.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Puji. As I said, usually when we go, we always try as soon as possible to be a disaster-stricken area, to see the disaster trace, disaster track, and to perform what we call the disaster forensic analysis. Disaster forensic analysis determining the mechanism, not the cause. This is different. We can say easily the cause of the disaster, but we should determine the mechanism of the disaster. So if we understand the mechanism, we can distinguish which one coming for the first, which one coming for the second, and which one coming for the last. So this sort of forensic disaster analysis is absolutely a crucial step that we should do before making further analysis in terms of defining the number, defining the further analysis. That's my comment, Pak Puji.
Thank you. I think we will grow wiser and older and better as we move along in this newly formed field of disaster statistics. Dr. Muhari, there is one more question from Tanalet Simi Hause. I hope I read your name correct. In the case of documentation of the displaced population, okay, let me just read it. Will there be work also to consider the period of displacement? For example, how long the people remain displaced and how would you count them, according to that period of time? Over to you, Dr. Mahari.
Yeah. Usually, the problem is that we're facing when we calculate, or we make a record of the period of displacement people. It's not for an example, geological hazard, because if we discuss geological hazard or volcanic hazard, they will be at the refugee area or the evacuation, so for the little bit longer period, at least several months. But if we discuss about flood refugees, they will stay probably on the several days to week. So in this case, the BMPB calculate the number of evacuee in each evacuation shelter every day. So we can make a graph, the dynamic of the number of the evacuee. In example, probably at the first or the second day after the flood, it will be very high. And after that, the third day, the fourth day, when the flooding starts to recede, then the evacuee will be decreased. So and usually, the period that we use to calculate the number of evacuee related with the status of the area. So, an example, the emergency response phase only lasts up to 14 days. So we only calculate the dynamic of the evacuee on that period at maximum 14 days. If there is no extended period, then we stop. Then we lock the number. If it is extended, then we extend the calculation. That's the way, Pak Puji. I hand over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahari. I don't want to hold you on the highway for too long. Otherwise, the police will come over to you. But thank you very much, Dr. Mahari. And Ajeng, thank you for your sharing your plan of the PPS. I really hope personally and professionally that the hazard information profile will be quickly be adapted to Indonesia with the good work of PPS and colleagues. And Kansa is standing by available to support. Yumi-san, thank you for sharing the wisdom of ADRC as usual, very highly valued. And then Kunpor for introducing the framework. To four of you, thank you very much. And colleague, as a closing, let me say that rudimentary as it is, the discipline has grown now, at least in the case of Indonesia and our region. It's not perfect yet, it's work in progress, but I think the hope is there. And keep yourself attuned with the progress, and hopefully we can share more information at a later date. Speakers, thank you very much. And I would like to pass it on back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Puji, for the great facilitations. And then thank you, Dr. Mohari, Ajeng, and Shiomi-san, and then Paul for their presentations. Also, thank you for those who asked the questions, especially Kanza, for raising the issues about the cascading disaster statistics. Hopefully, everyone will think about how they can register or some issues related to this cascading disasters. So with this, now we are close to the end of today's session. So before closing the meeting, I would like to fix the date for our next meeting. And I'm pretty sure that you all know that the next month, the UNDRR, together with the Indonesia government, will host the 7th session of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in Bali, Indonesia. So I believe several of us will participate in the event. So we would like to consult the date and time for our next meeting. So together with the Secretariat, I would like to propose 2 dates. The first one is 24th of May it's a Tuesday, and then second, it's a Wednesday, 29th of May, 1 week after this global platform. So please feel free to raise your hand or use chat box to choose the date for our next meeting. Thank you. So to be more clear, the global platform for disaster risk reduction will be held from 23rd of May to 28th of May. So please vote for the date for our next meeting, unless I will choose the one. So if there are none, I would prefer to have our next meeting after the global platform for disaster risk reduction as considering. So yes, now we have a poll. You can choose. You can participate in the vote in a chat box. So far, we have only 7 responses. So in total, we have now 19 people. As for now, we have 12 responses, and then most of us has agreed to hold the meeting on Wednesday, 29th of June from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Bangkok time. So thank you very much for participating in the vote for fixing the date for our next meeting. I don't think we will get the more vote for the Tuesday, 24th of May. So with that, I would like to declare the meeting closed, and then our next meeting will be on Wednesday, 29th of June, as usual, from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. And then before closing, I would like to ask, Secretariat, if there is any announcement or any other housekeeping issues, please do it now. Thank you. Yes, Ricky.
Yes, thank you very much, Ariona. And I just wanted to actually mention what I see my colleague Leticia has just put in the chat box, which is that there is actually a dedicated session at the global platform on data challenges and solutions for disaster risk management. And this is a session where ESCAP has been approached to possibly speak there. We are still discussing a bit, but it's if any of you need to choose specific sessions to put your emphasis on, I strongly encourage you to look this particular session up. And I also would think that in addition, of course, to continuing our TWG meeting as planned in June, we could hopefully get one of the people from UNDRR who are sort of part of the core organizing team for the global platform to maybe speak at our next TWG meeting to share with us a few highlights from there. So this is something we could see if we could organize from ESCAP. I think that would be of interest to all of us.
Thank you, Ricky, and then thank you, Ms. Letizia, for the information. And then those who will participate in the global platform, please use this opportunity and then please gather and then share your ideas and then participate. Personally, unfortunately, I will not go to Bali this time due to the personal circumstances, but I will see you in June for our next meeting. And then please enjoy your stay in Bali and then enjoy the global platform. I hope to see you in Brisbane in September for this Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, in which I'm planning to participate. And then thank you very much again for joining us today, and then see you next month. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.